Mr. Easton. I'm so excited about the new large group you have planned for tomorrow.
Oh. Yeah, I've been looking forward to it all week.
Yeah, about that large group. You know, my kids, gosh, they've just been driving me crazy this week, and, you know, people just come in asking questions every open mod, and it's just driving me, I'm not quite ready yet.
Seriously? You're killing me, Smalls. Okay everyone, some of you probably had no idea why I just called Mr. Easton Smalls, and some of you totally get it and maybe even laughed. If you've seen the movie The Sandlot, you know exactly what I mean by saying, "You're killing me, Smalls," and why I would say that to Mr. Easton after he told me he didn't get his stuff done. Now on the other hand, if you haven't seen that movie, you're thinking, huh? To give you a little background, the phrase "you're killing me, Smalls" comes from the movie The Sandlot. The protagonist has lived a very sheltered life and often doesn't understand pop culture references or do the expected thing among his new friend group. He earns the nickname Smalls because he's, well, smaller than everyone else. Since he's often clueless or unreliable, one of his friends frequently says, "You're killing me, Smalls." This type of reference, which often makes its way into our everyday conversations and frequently into the literature we read, is what this video is about. In literature, whether it be poetry, fiction, nonfiction, or any other genre, authors often make references to people, places, historical events, even pop culture icons to help them illustrate a point. These references are what we call allusions. An allusion is a reference to someone or something commonly known from literature, history, religion, or other areas of culture. I know the definition sounds kind of complicated, but really it's not. The most important piece to understanding allusions is background knowledge. Remember, those of you who had seen The Sandlot because it was part of your background knowledge got my allusion. Those without the background knowledge didn't. In fact, you're probably more aware of allusions than you realize. If you've ever had inside jokes with your friends that other friends didn't get, those were allusions because you were referring to something you expected everyone to already understand. This is what leads to that "you wouldn't understand" moment when someone says they don't get the joke. I'm going to start out with some examples that you're likely to be familiar with. Much of what we watch on TV is full of allusions. Shows like Family Guy, The Simpsons, and Saturday Night Live use allusions all the time to connect to their audiences, create social commentary, or just mock pop culture and what is currently happening in the news. If you've ever watched Family Guy or The Simpsons, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They model characters after real-life people. They mimic real-life situations in their show's plot. Those are allusions. In fact, The Simpsons is known for making literary allusions, so much so that there have been episodes devoted to classic literary works, like the novel Lord of the Flies by William Golding,
What's everyone's problem? I'm glad we're stranded. It'll be just like the Swiss Family Robinson, only with more cursing. We're gonna live like kings.
and the poem The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe.
Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou,
I said,
but sure no craven, ghastly, grim, and ancient raven wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the nice Plutonian shore.
quoth the raven.
Eat my shorts.
Bart, stop it. He says nevermore, and that's all he'll ever say.
Okay.
Allusions in literature can refer to the Bible, legends or mythology, fairy tales, or other literary works, movies, historical events, pop culture, and the list goes on. What makes allusions kind of tricky is that you, the reader, are expected to understand these references without the author explaining them to you. That's where the background knowledge comes in. Obviously, we don't expect you to know all of them, but we do want you to seek out answers when you come across them in poetry or in anything else you read. Here are some examples of allusions you often come across in literature and even in everyday conversation. How many of you knew that the company Nike is an allusion? Nike was the Greek goddess of victory. When you think about Nike as the athletic apparel and sporting goods company, it makes perfect sense that they would choose the goddess of victory for their name. We also see a lot of allusions when describing people and their personalities or physical features. When you hear someone talk about an athlete's Herculean strength, that's a reference to Roman mythology. Hercules, whom many of you remember from the Disney movie, was known for his tremendous strength and great adventures. As long as we have the background to know these references and why they are significant, they totally make sense. Now let's think about a literary movie connection I bet you're familiar with, The Fault in Our Stars. Did you know that John Green is making an allusion to Shakespeare with the title The Fault in Our Stars? The allusion here is to Shakespeare's tragedy Julius Caesar, when Cassius says to Brutus, quote, "The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves," end quote. The meaning here is that it's not fate that makes the bad luck, but our own choices. John Green decides to flip that meaning around and refute its position, though. If you've read the book, you know that this quote appears in Peter Van Houten's letter to Augustus. Van Houten says, quote, "Never was Shakespeare more wrong than when he has Cassius note this quotation," referring to the unlucky fate cancer throws at Hazel Grace and Augustus, and that it's most definitely not their fault, and that fate is a cruel beast. How are you feeling about recognizing allusions at this point? Should we try to look at a few together? Let's look at a famous Robert Frost poem called "Nothing Gold Can Stay." Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief. So dawn goes down to day, nothing gold can stay. This poem appears to be about nature and how the beauty of new growth at spring is wonderful to enjoy, but eventually dies as the seasons change. The deeper meaning is a lot more, however. The idea here is that the gold is our material objects and wealth, and while those may make us happy for a little while, they don't last forever, hence, nothing gold can stay. The important allusion in this poem is the reference to the Garden of Eden. Poets, especially the classic poets, often made biblical references in their poems. To understand this reference, it's important to know that the Garden of Eden was a very beautiful place where everything seemed perfect. Adam and Eve had the best possible situation until they succumbed to temptation they were warned against. This is likely a comparison to the temptation and potential disappointment that material possessions, or gold, can create in our world. Would this message have been effective without this reference? Yeah, probably. But making this reference helps Robert Frost make his point even more clear by calling upon and connecting to things that many of his readers would have already been familiar with. He doesn't come right out and say, money or material objects create a temptation, just like Adam and Eve were tempted in the Garden of Eden. But when you're able to make the connection on your own, it leaves a lasting impression. You'll often see allusions used to help create imagery in a poem or to help convey a theme. I also want you to know that allusions aren't confined just to classic poetry. You will find them in all genres. They might just look a little different. Let's review. Remember that an allusion is a reference to someone or something commonly known from literature, history, religion, or other areas of culture. It relies heavily on the reader's background knowledge, so if you don't have that background knowledge, you may have to do a little research or ask some questions, and that's a good thing. As you read poetry in this unit, be on the lookout for references to people, events, things, places that are commonly known, either presently or were in the past. It could be a reference to literature, history, religion, or other areas of pop culture. You'll probably start noticing these allusions a lot more after watching this video too. Happy allusion hunting!